Wow. So we have tier 3 on Patreon, Scenthusiasm now, and it is about, well, it's for people who are thinking of actually doing this for a living, and all the things that you need to think through before you throw your life at it, which can be quite tricky. But most small businesses go out of business in the first year. The rest of them go out of business in the next 3 years. And do people want to do this really? Do they? I mean, maybe it's best to do it as a very interesting hobby. Maybe it's best to do it as a side hustle. Or maybe it's best to make sure you get somebody else to do it and you just manage it.
Mm-hmm.
All of these options. But what I realise I'm encouraging is people to go into perfumery when they've not worked in perfumery before. It'd be a little bit like somebody to say, I've decided I'm going to give up everything and be an artist without ever having learnt how to paint.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm going to give it all up and join a band. And then that's the point at which they learn to play the guitar.
Sex Pistols.
They had a very good manager. And yeah. But how many others at the time probably thought the same thing? We've never heard of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, there's the Sex Pistols. So it's not that I don't say... And, you know, I've been described as a punk perfumer.
Yeah.
For accords and a guitar. Balls. But what do you need to know before you throw yourself into all this? And I think one of the biggest decisions is, do you want to make the perfume? Once you've decided to make the perfume, that means you're doing all the technical things, and you probably want to spend all your time doing that. Who's going to do all the other stuff for you? Because probably at the beginning you're going to have to do all the other stuff for yourself.
The other stuff being all the regulations and stuff.
The regulations stuff, the packing up the parcels and getting them out the door, the noticing that you're running out of boxes and you maybe need to order some, and the VAT returns, and dealing with retailers, and sorting out who's going to collect the rubbish. I mean, everything, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
There are kind of 3 big roles. There's the person who makes it, there's the person who has all the ideas and gets it all started, and there's the person who makes sure it all happens.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly everybody is that person, because they're just that person to start with. So the first task that I set everyone was the maker story, which is just, well, it was 5 words, how you want people to feel when they try your product. I mean, and we got some really good answers, actually, which I should probably get out, but it was definitely, how do you want other people to feel when they try them? What are you trying to evoke in people?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I set was 5 sentences on how you came to be in this point at which you are launching a product. So that's your founder story. And what we got back was some of those, but lots of other sentences about people, how they feel about it and where they want to be in the future, and some very conceptual things. So I realised I didn't explain it as well as I possibly could. So this is for, like, top marks for the people who thought it through and thought, oh no, I get it. And for all the people who didn't quite get it, sorry that I hadn't explained it well enough. But it is something like this. If you were to say to me, Sarah, how did you get into perfumery?
Sarah, how did you get into perfumery?
Funny you should ask that, Arthur. I was working for Lush as their head writer, but I really thought I wanted to make things. So actually I left, and I was pottering about making a few things, but I got distracted and I wrote a novel about a perfumer who makes fragrances that remind people of happy times. But as I sent it to precisely 2 publishers and they both said nothing, I sort of was a bit downhearted, and I thought, well, I'll make it more interesting by making the perfumes, or finding the perfumes that I had described in the book. And then I went out searching for all those perfumes, discovered that they didn't exist. So I thought, I know, I'll have a go at making them all myself. This was quite difficult, but ploughing through, took me about 2 years. I discovered how to do it, how to make them legal, and I got flattered into setting up a perfume company. Beginning story to where we are, how we came about founding it. It was probably too long. You're supposed to have a 30-second elevator pitch.
Yeah.
How long you got in a lift with somebody. But that's your founder story is what you did and how you got there. It's fact. Cutting out many bits, but it's how you got there.
It's the mythology.
So it starts the mythology. And what I find is that if it is true, then it is much more easy to be consistent.
Yeah.
If you keep changing your mind about what happened retrospectively, putting different parts into it, then that's quite difficult to remember what you've said to people. And if, in fact, the entire thing is false, like brands I can't mention because they might sue.
I know some of the ones you're on about.
Yeah, there are 2 biggies, but there are others. And some of, their founder story was, yes, I made it all myself. There's morphed into, no, did I say that? No, they were all my idea, but I would never dream of trying to make them myself because the French must do that. So
Yeah.
there's that. But so that the founder story, it's if you can get that into 5 sentences and somebody says, "Oh, how did you start making perfume?" It's like, boom, I did that. Then the next task is going to be where do you hope this will take you? So it's still very practical. How will you know when you've succeeded? How do you measure success? I was on a video recently with my university group that I'm studying with, and people say, "Oh well, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they got very wealthy, and they got famous." Is that what everybody's aiming for? Because that's probably inachievable. So
I will tell you right now what success is.
tell me.
Success is having Aesop hand soap in your downstairs toilet. That's it.
Yeah.
That's success. I don't know if you knew that, but that is. You can always tell a successful person when they have Aesop hand soap in their downstairs toilet.
Yeah, and for me, it's probably not something I aspire to because is it bar soap?
No, they're those pumpy ones.
You see, I won't have those in the house because
likewise.
So
It is success though.
But the point is, if that's how you choose to measure it, then
That was a joke, by the way.
Yeah, that's great. At the moment, I wasn't sure, but yeah, you can measure it as you see fit. Mine. I have 3 things by which I intend to measure success, and it is I will live in a house that I've actually paid for. I say house, could be home, could be shed, but it would be mine, and I will have enough time to invite people round and a big enough room to be able to invite people round and enough time to invite people round, and I will fit into those Catherine Hamlet jeans I bought last year. That's it. Those are my 3 criteria, and so I'm working towards those. So my next task, which I am setting, anybody who's watching this, who's got this far, how are you going to measure success? Because if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. I think the Cheshire Cat said that, words to that effect. Something like that in Alice in Wonderland. It's best to know where you are going. So that is the next task in the Tier 3 professional course, is if you haven't done your 5 sentences, your founder story, fact, where you started, how you got here, do them. And then, what are your 3 criteria for success? You might not want to share them.
I have a question.
Ask me a question.
Or rather, I have a thought to throw in.
Go.
Because quite often, things never pan out the way that you imagine them. I mean, they never do, because it's impossible to predict the future.
Yeah.
So, what the purpose of those three things, is that a way to keep you inspired and keep you inspired, or is it do you actually have to achieve them? Because often I find if I'm aiming for A,
Yep.
you need to remain open enough to be able to see opportunity B coming, and then grasp hold of that. But if you're so focused on opportunity A, you can miss B and C and D and E.
Oh. Very good question. And I would say that setting those realistic objectives, that's to keep you on track. It's not to blinker you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you know, so okay, well, doing that thing helped me to achieve that. So if B comes along and you think, okay, that looks really interesting, might it help me to get my house paid for? Might it help me to have a bit more time so I can have friends around? Is that, or is it sufficiently wonderful of itself that I want to go there? If you want to go there instead, then great, but you have to really stop and think, do I reset?
Mm-hmm.
Or is that a thing which I can use to take me here? Because if you set where it is that you want to go, it's more difficult to be distracted by things which are interesting but actually will just hold you back from where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And if it might be, I want to make millions. It might be that. In which case, anything can distract you. And it's better to have, what's really important. Is it, to be on the front page of Vogue or something? It could be that. But then once you've achieved it, you have to reset. And it's good to constantly revisit them until you're absolutely certain that that is sort of where you want to be. Also, they have to be achievable.
Yeah. The next thing is it better to have, obviously, material goals are quite. Is it better to have?
Measurable is another thing. So.
Yeah, or so rather than going, I want to have a pool one day.
Mm-hmm.
Is it not better to go, I want to have the freedom to go swimming whenever I like? It's the same. It's almost the same thing, but they're framed slightly differently. One's material and one's
access to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a thing where I used to go and stay in a house that belonged to a friend, and it was in France, and I could use the house whenever I needed to, and pay them some money, and as long as somebody else hadn't booked it, I could go and stay in that house because they was friends with them for a long time. And some other friends came over and they said, oh yeah, we really want to buy a house in France. I was thinking, I'm perfectly happy with just having access to somebody else's.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. Is it that there's the story about rich bloke makes himself loads of money and then sells his company so that then he can have time to sit by a lake and go fishing, and he meets a man who sits there by the lake going fishing, who's done it all his life because he liked going fishing, so he didn't bother setting up a company to get rich and so he could go fishing. I think I've told it in the wrong order, but
no, but that's,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
If that's what somebody really wants to do is get rich enough so he can go fishing whenever he likes, maybe he just doesn't need to get rich on the way. He can just go fishing.
Yeah.
Is that what he really wants, or is it just get rich? So it depends. I envisage many interesting answers to this question. It's not easy.
Well, also there is no answer. There is no right answer,
and it can change. And mine, that's mine for this year. Is like, realistically, what do I think? And it's like when I talk about success, I kind of mean, what do I think will make me happy? What will make me feel comfortable and that I'm content. And it's not about buckets of cash, and to some people it might be, because that might be more important. But I think buckets of cash, or enough so that you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
And then if I had buckets of cash, I think I would share it with people who I knew were worrying about not having enough.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever... I don't know if anyone ever truly gets there. A feeling of going, I am now a success. Do they?
I don't know. That's kind of what drives you when you've achieved the things that you hope to achieve. Because I've hit a lot of those. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had a chat with Paul Smith. I've been in the New York Times. And you hit them, and then you think,
Well, what next?
yeah. But then there's this that comes
Yeah.
up. So I think there are some people who just never stop doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. What if true success is always... You are truly successful if you've always got something to work towards.
Mm-hmm. I guess you don't want to... Yes, it does depend what kind of person you are. I mean, my dad thought for his whole life he wanted to be able to buy the house that he'd stayed in when he was evacuated during the war. So he was from a little...
Isn't that the Bose Museum?
That was the house he went to school in.
Right.
During the
say he
war.
wanted to buy the Bose Museum.
No, he didn't want to buy the Bose Museum, but he did like to visit. But yeah, he went to school in the Bose Museum. Buying that would have been a bit ridiculous. But he lived in a very nice house in a village called Rumblecirk with Dr. Hawthorne and Mrs. Hawthorne and Mamie. And he was very happy there, and he always thought that's what he'd want. And when he got to about the age where if he really pushed it and cashed everything in, he could have bought this house in Teesdale. He thought, well, I can go to Newcastle and Sunderland to the theatre, and I can go to South Shields to concerts, and I can go to Newcastle City Hall to concerts, and I can get home without having to drive down a single track road and accidentally drive into the river.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided that the dream that he'd hoped for wouldn't make him happy. It would just make him worried about having to drive in the dark down a single track road, or he couldn't go to the theatre, which was kind of his biggest love. So, having achieved that point, and this is somebody who kept being offered promotion and turning it down because he was happy managing 17 people. He didn't want 35. He knew that would make him unhappy.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people he worked with who wanted lots more money, status, to be more important. But the big bosses liked my dad because they knew that he wasn't, if he sat next to him, he wouldn't hassle them for promotion and try and impress them. They'd just have a chat about the theatre and concerts. So he actually was very happy with where he was.
Yeah.
And decided to stay in the 1960s, square box of a house that had access to the things that he enjoyed.
It's probably also, though, that mentality is probably also the reason why he kept getting offered promotions.
Possibly was, because he didn't irritate everybody asking for them. But also he probably could have done it, but he didn't want that.
No, you've got to work out your priorities, haven't you, really? So
that for him, he was very happy that he had, 2 children who knew how to play music. And a house that was big enough and comfortable enough and easy access to the theatre. So, how do you measure success? Yeah, no. That's the question. Right, and the answer is Aesop soap in your downstairs bathroom.
Aesop soap in your downstairs bathroom. You know you've arrived. Or L'Occitane.
L'Occitane.
Is that it?
L'Occitane.
L'Occitane. I haven't said it. I think so, true success is being able to pronounce L'Occitane.
I think it's turned into a John Cooper Clarke poem for me now. Aesop soap in your downstairs bathroom.
It's true.
Okay, and your next task, everybody, is to write that poem.
It's getting dark now.
It's getting dark.